Welcome to Christ the Lord Clearwater's weekly message. I'm Pastor John Backus here in our studio in Clearwater, Florida, where we share the good news of Jesus from the Gulf Coast. The Gulf Coast is a place of tides, and those who live in this area are very familiar with watching water come in and water go out. And this repeats time after time, day after day. Water comes in, and then the tide goes out. As a community church living in this community, we also have our own type of tides made up of people. Every weekend for worship events, people come to our campus and they participate in our services and then they go back to their lives. People join us online, give us their attention and investment, and then they head back to your personal lives. There's people that come in and out not only every weekend, but over the span of our congregational story. Because we're here to serve people and connect with people, that means we're always watching the doors. In the studio I'm in tonight, we've got one main door in the corner where people enter in for our Saturday service and leave again. And I'm always watching that door on Sunday morning. It's the main doors to our bigger church sanctuary because that's where the people we serve come in. The door is the place in the church where we have the opportunity for Christian love to be present. Christian love, which is this worldview that says there's a God who loves us, and even though we don't always know his plan, he proved it in Christ, the chosen one. When God became flesh in the form of Jesus, he lived as a moral replacement for us, for the wrongdoings that we've done in our life. Jesus pays the debt for our sin guilt, and then tells us that we're forgiven because of his investment in us. His death on the cross covered our guilt. His resurrection proved that we are forgiven. We love that worldview, and that's really why we have doors, because we want to gift people living in a world with regret or shame, sin problems, fear of death or judgment by a divine being someday, what comes after death, life and hell, or these things are addressed by the loving message of Jesus Christ. Christian love flows in and out of our doors. Supportive love is what we give our people when they're here and we send them back to their homes. When we take what we've found good in our church and look to share it and offer it to our community. Attractive love is what we do when people find their way here. The tide brings someone into our building. We want to take good care of them while they're here, spiritually and interpersonally. We believe that that is God's good design for our church, because like Christian churches of Jesus' day, we're encouraged by Jesus' teaching in the Bible to care about people, both taking care of our own people and doing a good job to show love to those outside of our circles. That was the case for a church in the Mediterranean area called the Church at Thessalonica. The Apostle Paul was a missionary. He had been there and he wrote to them. He gave them this advice. About your love for one another, we do not need to write to you, for you yourselves have been taught by God to love each other. And in fact, you do love all of God's family throughout Macedonia. Yet we urge you, brothers and sisters, to do so more and more. Well, Paul is telling that congregation, he commends them for their kindness in Christ to each other, but he prays that this would be present more and more, not only in their own congregation, but in the entire region of the world where their congregation is located. Back to our door analogy. In this passage, how is love using the door? Is it supportive love for the well-being of others reaching out, or is it attractive love welcoming others in and taking care of them when they arrive? In this case, it's supportive love reaching out. But there's more. Paul also would continue. Make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you will not be dependent on anybody. Paul says another thing. He says that when it comes to the private life of the individual Christian, that we mind our business, be responsible and balanced, gentle and healthy, leading quiet lives, not filled with bickering or gossip or violence, but a life that when someone comes into your life and looks at how things are going, they would nod with approval and give you their respect. Now, this type of impact is love using the door, not as love that goes out, but as attractive love that is welcoming to other people looking in from the outside. So attractive love welcoming in was also part of the lives of the Thessalonian Christians. All right, so like tides going in and out, love uses our doors. But what is the state of the tide out there in our culture right now? I'm not talking about what our church operation is like. I'm talking about the way things work in the world that we live in.
When the first Lutheran immigrants came to this country from places like Germany and Norway, church was still very much at the center of culture. And this mindset continued well into the 20th century. When people would move into a new community, one of the first things they would look for was a church to attend. But that mindset has changed. Many people no longer think this way anymore. Our culture is increasingly being described with words like de-churched and secular and sometimes even post-Christian. So the way our culture thinks about religion has changed. If we want to reach out to this great mission field of our own culture which God has placed before us, if we want atheists and skeptics and the younger generations and people who are furthest from God to hear the story of Jesus' love, then that mission work is often not going to start at the church. It's going to start with you.
Love motivates us to push past our fears, anxieties, and nervousness.
None of us have it right, and none of us have it perfect, but Jesus fills that in for us.
Because it's a different day when you have that comfort.
We can be present, and we can be persistent.
These next 3 lessons are an exploration of active listening.
Do you ever think that God just might be using you to carry out His work, His timing, His purposes in changing lives?
And this is what we do. This is our gift.
You do not need to be locked up in the fear of the possibility of not having any answer at all.
Peace be with you.
So let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Jesus is sending you.
According to missionary Lucas, what's the state of the tide in our culture right now? Are current forces in society bringing people closer to us that can show them love in an attractive way? Or is the tide taking people further away from us? The 3 words that were used were de-churched, secular, and post-Christian. The tide is flowing away from the church. Increasingly, people are not coming into church doors. So how will we show Jesus' love to them if they are not in here? We go back to the experience of the Macedonians. We remember the calling to show supportive love to those outside of our own culture and context. We urge you, brothers and sisters, to do this more and more throughout Macedonia. What we're seeing in our culture today is that the balance between Christian love that reaches out and Christian love that welcomes or is hospitable, an attractive love, has shifted. This is no longer our priority. When people come in our door, we'll love them. Now, granted, we really still want to do that. We want to take good care of people when they come to us. But there's fewer and fewer people who will instinctively want to do that. In other words, what's this door really for? Our door is for taking Jesus' love out to others. Well, how will we do that? Here's some first steps that people who are part of our worship events will notice. First of all, this fall, we're going to start a Mission Church training course called Let's Go. Now, normally I would teach a training course like this in one of our academic settings, such as our Sunday morning 9 o'clock Bible study. But this training is too vital to restrict only to that small group. And that group is just a small slice of our whole congregational pie. It's a significant minority of our regular weekend participants who are part of this academic event each week. Since the training is too vital for our mission to relegate to that small piece of the pie, I'm going to move this teaching course into the place where the people are. We're going to go to where the people are, and right now, the most people that we impact and connect with are in our 2 weekend church services. So we'll begin training as a mission church in our regular services. That means those who participate with us will receive a training manual, get to view video segments by missionaries and communication professors in our church network who have experience, wisdom, and good hearts to match. That means church may feel a little bit different for those of you who attend in person over the next 8 weeks. Secondly, we're setting up a congregational culture workshop. A weekend workshop over 2 days, a Saturday into a Sunday afternoon, called Everyone Outreach. And the goal of Everyone Outreach isn't to talk about things that churches do, but the ways that churches think. To go from being reluctant or resistant to change, to joyfully embracing change in order to connect to the lost. To move from being hesitant to reach out to the lost because of a barrier or obstacle, to being compelled to reach out to the lost in spite of its complexity. To move from where we say, all are welcome, no one's turned away, we're not going to kick anybody out, to a place where all are welcomed, where we ensure that people feel a sense of belonging. To move from, there's work to do over there somewhere, to there's mission work right here. This approach is called Everyone Outreach. On September 14th, leaders from our church will begin the planning work to set up this workshop. It's a whole church weekend workshop led by Synod consultants. We're going to fly them in for 2 days so that they can train and equip us in our congregational outlook. A third thing we're going to do is to make the effort to work to understand what people outside of our culture don't understand. We will work to understand what people don't understand. In other words, we'll try to see what are the points of someone from outside of our culture as they consider coming in that make it difficult for them to do so. In our congregation's personal story, one of these points of understanding is the way we handle the Lord's Supper. Here we offer member communion. We believe that this Bible teaching about member communion is clear, that we are to know what the meaning is, not come in uncertain, that we are to come in properly prepared, understanding the real presence, that this isn't just a spiritual or mental exercise, but Christ is truly present in this meal, along with the promise that sins are forgiven. And because the New Testament clearly teaches that we are to first be instructed and then come to the meal, therefore, our church practices member communion, which essentially means we first instruct and then we invite you. Now, this Bible teaching is clear to us, but not most other people. It's not very common to run into somebody who has read 1 Corinthians 10 or 11 recently and knows exactly what the Bible quotes are that talk about the nature of the Lord's Supper. Just think about when's the last time you looked up that Bible quote. Now, even though it might be clear to us in our church, culture, or leadership, it's not clear to many others. So it's a difficult point for someone to come into a public church service and note that at a certain point, everything turns private. We say, everybody's welcome here except at this point. Now you stay out, and you stay out, and you stay out. There's good reasons for why we have member-only communion, but they're not easily understood at first glance. Now, normally, the burden for that is placed on the guest who comes in and is asked not to commune yet. They do the work of adapting to our culture, but we want to change that. We want to work so that we'll do the work to understand what people don't. That if we know what communion preparation is about and what it means to be properly prepared and who we are to commune with those united in faith, that we're going to do the work inside of our scope of control. What this means is that for now we're going to keep our small group member communion services outside of our public worship setting. We've been doing that for almost a year now with COVID, having member communion in a small group service after Saturday church and before Sunday church. And for now we're going to keep that in place because it's a way for us to remove a difficulty that other people don't understand when they come into our company, our services. We want to do the work to understand what people don't. Now that means our church practice of the Lord's Supper will be a little bit more complex. It means that it's our own people who will have to do the burden of adjusting, that will ask our own people to make an investment of 20 to 30 extra minutes on a day they want to commune, rather than asking other guests who aren't familiar with our culture to make the adjusting. We're going to try this for now. And number 4, we're going to have a challenge card distributed this weekend. I'll put it up on the screen for you so you can see what it looks like. But the challenge card are just some simple steps to get us used to the concepts of either speaking, walking, or thinking outside of our own story. This month's challenges include options like, tell one person daily a blessing I've been given through Jesus. This allows us to practice verbalizing the blessings that we have as Christians. Another is in our thought life, to pray for or verbally pray for someone, if possible, by name, my next door neighbor. When we pray for someone, we not only place them in God's powerful care, but it also alerts us and keeps them on our radar as someone that we want to care for too. Some are gifted with generosity. We have an avenue to support mission work outside of our congregation in other places in our church network. And we also want people to consider coming to our church campus, if you're in the area, parking your car here and taking a walk, one walk a week through our neighborhood, to walk through the place that we call our primary mission field, the 6-block radius around our sanctuary. If you have other ideas for how you can live outside of your own interests and take steps toward sharing Jesus outside of your own life or our own church culture, you can write in your own, sign or initial these, take a picture of them on your phone, and revisit them periodically during the month of September. Like tides going in and out, churches also have seasons where people come to us and then they leave. As a Florida church, we face some challenges. No longer are churches multi-generational. The family doesn't stay with the local farm from grandma to kids to grandkids. Instead, there's a lot of transition. People moving in and moving out, retirement, traveling, seasonal visitors. People don't stay in one place, and they don't tend to stay in their churches either. But the mission field in Tampa is in need of us. There are people living near us who struggle with guilt, who need new beginnings, who are looking for a better way to live life that doesn't lead to so much heartache, and especially to know a right relationship with God that brings peace and the promise of forgiveness of sins, resurrection from the dead, and the gift of heaven someday. The mission field in Tampa is in need of us because our world is in need of the love of Jesus. And it's our hope that as people come in and out of our doors, what we do here can equip our people and even you to take the love of Jesus that you've known and gift it to someone else. To share the good news that you've heard here on the Gulf Coast by living a God-lived life for the benefit of someone else.